Harry Potter is my favourite series of all time, but it has a lot of flaws and problems and just bad moments in there. Like, don't get me wrong, I love the magic, I love the characters, I love the story, but there are some moments you just can't ignore for all that you love. Frankly, some of the series is just bad. From lazy writing to unforgivable plot holes, let's talk about some of the worst moments of the Harry Potter series. So The Chamber of Secrets is my least favourite book and film from the Harry Potter series, and there's a few reasons why, but largely it's because of the ending. There's this trope in writing called a Deus ex machina, which is basically the idea that things seem to be doomed and our characters are in a bleak situation with no way out, and then suddenly an otherwise unexplained, unestablished external force swoops in and saves the day. It happens in the Philosopher's Stone to a degree with the whole touching Quirrell's face and making him melt thing. Like, this was never a power or idea that was even hinted at in the book until that point. And then suddenly Quirrell and Voldemort have Harry trapped and oh, there's this power that will save him. But it happens more significantly in the Chamber of Secrets. Harry is trapped in the chamber. Ginny is dying, Riddle has Harry's wand, a basilisk is trying to kill the boy who lived. Harry is cornered. He's about to die and he has no way out. But then suddenly, without warning, a phoenix swoops in at the perfect time and it blinds the basilisk and Harry isn't in danger anymore of being killed by its stare. And then it brings Harry the sorting hat and within it, the sword of Gryffindor, which he can conveniently use to kill the snake. But oh no, Harry has been bitten and now basilisk venom runs through his veins. He's going to die. No, wait. A phoenix tears can cure pretty much any wound, so Harry is saved. It just all feels a little too convenient. And in general, I feel like that trope of a Deus ex machina is just lazy writing. A writer raises the stakes, builds the tension, writes into a climax that's really exciting, except they haven't done the groundwork to actually resolve anything. They haven't foreshadowed, they haven't laid the foundations for any way to actually get out of that situation in a way that seems fair or fulfilling. So they just bring in something new at the last minute and suddenly it's all over. It makes me feel cheated as a reader a little bit. Like, why am I going to get caught up in the stakes of any plot for any of the books that come after if something new can just come out of nowhere and change the rules? Time turner. Speaking of rules, the Quidditch rules are terrible in Harry Potter. Like, a magical sport where you fly on broomsticks sounds fantastic, and some of my favourite moments from the whole series actually come from Quidditch. But let's be honest, the only position that actually matters is the Seeker. 150 points for catching the snitch. It means basically whoever catches the snitch wins. And I know people will argue about the Quidditch World Cup, where Crumb catches the snitch but Bulgaria still lose. But honestly, I am 100% convinced J.K. Rowling only wrote that into the Quidditch World Cup because she was being criticised for how little the Quidditch rules make sense and how overpowered the Seeker was. Criticism that the Seeker was the only role that mattered in a Quidditch match, so she was like, I will show you, and she wrote the Quidditch World Cup to try and prove that the sport is about more than just the Seeker. But the snitch is worth 15 goals. Getting the quaffle through a hoop is worth 10 points, the snitch is worth 150. That's worth 15 goals. Can you imagine if football was decided by a goal that was worth 15? Or American football had a mechanic that was worth 15 touchdowns? 95% of the games will be decided by a Seeker catching the snitch, and it just ruins any competitive edge to the sport. Just look at some of the scores in the matches that Harry plays. Gryffindor wins the first game 170 to 60. Before the snitch, it was 20 to 60. And then boom, the game didn't matter because 150 points is worth more than those two scores put together. Then Gryffindor beats Hufflepuff 180 to 20. Before the snitch, it was 30 to 20. In the Hufflepuff game, the snitch was worth 3 times the combined score of both teams prior to it being caught, which just makes the sport kinda ridiculous. As does the whole thing about fouls, by the way. Apparently there are over 700 fouls in Quidditch, and yet Madam Hooch never seems to give them in any of the Quidditch matches that we watch. We see rogue bludgers, we see chasers taking beaters bats. We even see Harry on a cursed broom as Quirrell is trying to throw him off in the middle of a match. But nothing happens. The game isn't even stopped in those situations. The whole sport is just absurd and it makes me angry. Speaking of absurd, Voldemort's plans are ridiculous. Considering he's supposed to be really smart and really powerful, the guy's strategic thinking and planning really needs some work. Firstly, he uses Harry's blood for his resurrection. Why? He's scared that Harry is going to touch him in the face and kill him just like he did with Quirrell in the Philosopher's Stone. And so using Harry's blood will keep him alive if that happens. Except that The Horcruxes are keeping him alive. That's been proven from when he was pulled from his body 13 years ago. Plus, after he's resurrected, he plans to kill Harry immediately after. So why are you using Harry's blood so that he can touch you when he's going to be dead in 5 minutes? And that's after the whole Triwizard plot, which is ridiculously complex for no reason. Like, the Triwizard Cup is a portkey, and they need Harry to take the portkey to the graveyard, and the plan takes the entire year because he needs to get through the tournament to get to the Triwizard Cup. But why? Why does it have to take a year? Barty Crouch Jr. is disguised as Moody. He could just make a spoon a portkey, and then he just needs to say to Harry, hey, buddy, can you pass me that spoon, please? Harry goes to grab the spoon, that's a portkey, boom, he's in the graveyard, and on day 1 of his new year, Harry is there to resurrect Voldemort. Why are you wasting a year? And while we're destroying Voldemort's plans, what's the whole Nagini being Bathilda Bagshot thing about? Nagini is a literal Horcrux, and you're just gonna leave her there by herself. At this point, by the way, Voldemort has legions of followers. He knows, because Barty Crouch Jr. disguised himself for a year, that Polyjuice Potion is effective. Why not send Bellatrix or Lucius or Travers or any other Death Eater to Bathilda's house and have them use Polyjuice Potion to look like her? They have access to a house, so I'm sure finding her DNA, her hair or something to brew it would be really easy. Just the Nagini thing is stupid. Voldemort's plans in general are terrible. Harry's mind is contradictory. If we take a look at the Goblet of Fire, Barty Crouch Jr. tests the Imperious Curse on Harry. Harry, however, fights it off with relative ease. On his first try as well, by the way, without any practice. Now, Barty Crouch Sr. was a really impressive wizard, but he took months to break the Imperious Curse. Harry does it on his first try, and his internal monologue while he's fighting it is pretty blasé as well. He doesn't seem to have to work that hard to break the spell, to take back control of his mind. And then later that year in the graveyard with Voldemort, the Dark Lord uses the Imperious Curse on him, and he tries to make Harry beg, but once again, Harry's able to fight it off. And yet, if we fast forward just half a year to the Order of the Phoenix, when Harry is in occlumency lessons with Snape, he just can't do it at all. He has no control over his thoughts, and Snape can just easily access them. And look, maybe occlumency and Imperio access different parts of the brain, I don't really know, but it just feels inconsistent that he can fight the Imperious Curse from Barty Crouch Jr. and from Voldemort, but he can't shut off his mind in his occlumency lessons with Snape. Now, speaking of inconsistencies, there are some inconsistencies with Secret Keepers. They make no sense at all. Lily and James were being hidden when Voldemort was hunting, and they needed a secret keeper to conceal the secret of their cottage in Godric's Hollow. Dumbledore was considered, Sirius was almost chosen, but ultimately it fell on Peter Pettigrew. And we all know how that ended. But why couldn't Lily and James be their own secret keeper? When they talk about Sirius potentially being the secret keeper, Sirius talks about how he'd be willing to die before he sold them out. So the threat of torture and death and betrayal are very apparent in this situation. So why would you risk somebody being your secret keeper when you could just do it yourself? Because you can do it yourself. Bill is the secret keeper of Shell Cottage to protect him and Fleur. Arthur becomes the secret keeper of the Burrow when it becomes headquarters for the Order of the Phoenix. So why couldn't Lily or James be secret keeper for their cottage in Godric's Hollow? It just feels like a really obvious solution, one that could have saved their lives and the life of their child. And speaking of people who lost their life, I ranked the 5 saddest deaths in Harry Potter in this video here, which you'll want to watch next because some of the placings in that list might be controversial.